It was still pretty traumatic for both of us, and baby was in the NICU for about a week. And I think especially that it being my first baby, that really had an impact on both of us. And the feeding situation, I think, made breastfeeding just a lot harder.
Mhm.
And so we had a lot of trouble getting started. There was certainly days in those first few weeks where I didn't think we were going to even make it a month. And I think one of the things I have tried to be really open about with folks, other moms that I know, is that like whatever you need to do is fine. There's tools out there. We used nipple sheet.
Welcome to Cycles and Sanctity, the podcast where Catholic women learn to think clearly, feel deeply, and live confidently in the truth of who God created them to be. I'm Mama Jane.
And I'm Mama Vicky, your Catholic womanhood coaches. We believe womanhood is a gift to be embraced, never managed or met with shame. Our cycles are God's design, a tool for self-knowledge, deeper prayer, and holiness.
We help women heal mentally, emotionally, and spiritually so they can live with clarity, peace, and confidence.
If you're ready to trust your body, understand your interior life, and walk more freely with God, you're in the right place.
Welcome back, Catholic Divas, to Cycles and Sanctity. This is the breastfeeding month. We're so excited. Mama Vicky, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mama Jane. Good to see you. I am
Yes.
super excited about our guest today. She has a special place in both of our hearts.
Do you want to introduce her?
Well, sure, I will. Yes, we have Patricia. Snyder is not her last name anymore.
Yes, it
No,
is.
it still
Oh, it is
is.
still
No.
great news. Okay. Whew, I did get it right. But yeah, we have Patricia Snyder. She's got one little girl and she is still breastfeeding, and I'm going to let her introduce herself to tell us about Miss Addie.
Sure. Yeah. My daughter is just over a year old, and we've been breastfeeding the whole time. And so happy to chat about how that has gone. I also have a demanding job and have been working full time. I had about 2 months of full maternity leave and 2 months where I was part time. And then we had some childcare issues. So there was another couple months where I was three-quarters time. But the rest of the time have been 40 hours or more, often more. And so happy to chat about how that has worked.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
awesome.
curious,
Go
Trisha,
ahead.
thank well, first of all, this is my firstborn, so I'm just gonna how proud I am to just
Yes.
watching her grow as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, as an amazing professional. I mean, I just am so impressed with your job and your industry and everything. But what was it that made you decide, like, how did you make that decision to have that goal of breastfeeding for a year?
I actually started smaller than that. I just told myself that if I could at least make it to 6 months, I would be happy. I really wanted to make it to a year, but if I could make it to 6 months, a big part of that was I was really I like to be educated, and even if it's not an issue that I know a lot about, I like to read kind of the literature and kind of get up to date on what is recommended and make an informed decision. And everything that I was reading, everything that I was hearing was saying that, longer is better, but 6 months really has a lot of benefit for baby and mom. And so I just told myself if I could at least make it to 6 months, I'd be happy. And then we'd go from there. And then we made it past 6 months. And so then I said, okay, we'll go to a year. And now I made it to a year. And so now I'm going to see if we can make it to two. We'll see.
Patricia, I
Wow.
love that so much. I really think that is it's really important for our listeners to hear that, because so many of us start out, well, I'm going to nurse, either as long as the baby wants, or they have till 2 years. You have this big goal. And in the beginning, breastfeeding is usually, even if everything is going, quote, right, there's no, the baby's latching well, the mom's, not in pain, and it's going perfectly. 2 years sounds like an eternity. So if you have those shorter goals, and then all of a sudden you're there and you're like, wow, that was fast. And, I think it gives you the motivation to say, no, we can keep doing this. So that's
Yeah,
awesome.
there's also, I think, just a lot of pressure on moms
Oh
and
yeah.
especially working moms. And so I think, taking some of that pressure off yourself is really
Hmm.
important and just remembering that like any amount that you can do it is going to be a benefit. If you only make it 2 months, if you only make it 4 months, like that's great. And just being a little bit kinder. I found that there's sort of this weird dynamic with breastfeeding where it's like there's actually a lot of pressure to breastfeed for the first 6 months, and there's, sometimes good support, but it can also feel like a little much. And then after that, it's sort of kind of like, oh, you're still breastfeeding. And it
Yeah.
sort of that dynamic sort of flips a little bit of like, oh, well, why are you still breastfeeding? And
Yeah,
there's
it
like
does.
that support definitely just like drops off after 6 months. And so I think just being kind to yourself and recognizing that like whatever you can do is going to be great for your baby and not trying to put too much pressure on breastfeeding or on yourself because you're already under a lot of pressure.
100%. And I find it so funny, if you're out in if the world, if you were bottle feeding, if your workplace knew you were bottle feeding, no one is going to ask you on his seventh month, celebration, like he's still bottling. They don't ask that. They don't like you still buy formula. They don't
Yeah.
ask that. Like breastfeeding somehow becomes like this open, kind of like when you're pregnant and everyone feels they have the right to explain how you should do things. So that's awesome. I love that. I love what you're sharing. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
going to
what?
just jump in real quick. I want to just lean in on two different things you said, which was so powerful. The number one is being kind to ourselves.
Mhm.
Women, we're womenhood coaches, and no matter what the situation is, whether it's, trying to achieve pregnancy, not get pregnant, but, birthing, pregnancy, breastfeeding, perimenopause, whatever, being kind to ourselves is so paramount to our own well-being, right? I know for many, many, many years, and Trisha's a good witness to that, is that I was not kind to myself. So if I'm not kind to myself, then how can I be kind to others, right? I used to say, like, if what I thought about myself in my head, I spoke to my best friend, I would not have any friends, right? But the other thing I really love, Trisha, and I want to honor you again, is breaking down the goal, right? And also doing your own investigation is really making your own decision, taking all the information that you looked into and saying, this is what I choose to do based on what I've learned, what I'm capable of, or what I think I'm capable of. So, which is, again, as a coach, a lot of times I'll have clients come in with a big goal, right? And breaking those goals down, I mean, health goal, like, right? You're like, oh, I want to lose 50 pounds. And you're like, I want to lose it tomorrow. It's like, no, 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 let's break it down into, like, if you lose, 2 pounds this week or whatever. So really, I want to commend you on both of those things. But I know you wanted to ask another question, Vicky, so I'll pass it on to you.
Oh no, I love those two things, and I recently had heard that if every morning you should get up and say "I love you" to yourself.
Mm,
And that's kind of a tough one. And so oftentimes I think on those hard days when you're, because it's very easy to feel like somehow as a mom you're not doing whatever, fill in the blank. And we are very harsh to judge ourselves. And when other people are like kind of supporting that negative thought about yourself, it's easy to just not, it's easy to not be able to turn the train around. But yeah, I just wondered, I know you had some challenges um, in the very beginning, and maybe you can touch on those. And then um, let's see what, yeah, just touch on your challenges, not only in the beginning, but as a working mom and what made you persevere.
Yeah. We had kind of a traumatic birth, not as, terrible as many, but it was still pretty traumatic for both of us. And baby was in the NICU for about a week. And I think especially that it being my first baby, that really had an impact on both of us. And the feeding situation, I think made breastfeeding just a lot harder.
Mhm.
And so we had a lot of trouble getting started. There was certainly days in those first few weeks where I didn't think we were gonna even make it a month. And I think one of the things I have tried to be really open about with folks, other moms that I know, is that like whatever you need to do is fine. There's tools out there. We used nipple shields and things that like helped her get a good latch. Spent hours on the phone with you, Vicky,
Mm.
really leaned into like my network and um but also just we went to a lactation consultant that was available at our hospital. I took advantage of everything that I could. And I think I had seen breastfeeding moms mostly who were not working,
Mhm.
who were able to be with their babies 24/7, who didn't have any kind of like, traumatic birth or separation. And so it was sort of like an idealized picture of breastfeeding. And like that's works, that happens for some people. And I hope it happens to anybody who's listening, but it often doesn't. And I think that experience also really helped underscore that for me is like it was like once I went through that, all these friends that I had, but I didn't know that they had gone through, you
Mhm.
know, that like yeah, breastfeeding can be really, really hard, really, really
Mhm.
hard. And there's no guarantee that it's gonna be, easy to figure out. Um, so once you add on going back to work, I am very lucky that I had the ability to take some time off. And I'll forever be grateful to my job for that. I wish that was available to every woman, because it is just really huge and being able to, especially to breastfeed. I don't know that I would have been able to stick with it if I had to go back to work, right a couple
Mhm.
weeks later. Um, uh, but I have often said that pumping is like the worst thing I've ever done. I hate it. A friend of mine told me once that she still like her kids are, in middle school now, and she still feels like bad feelings when she hears the noise of a pump.
Yeah,
And I think that's gonna be me too. It's awful. Um, but you just kind of have to like get through it and keep going. One of the things that really helped me, again, like leaning into the tools that are at your disposal, is um I wish I'd done this earlier, but I just sucked it up and spent the money on a hands-free pump. So I'm actually pumping right now.
I love it.
And
I love it.
um it was expensive, which again, like I have that privilege that I could do that. Not everybody does, but it made things a lot easier that like I didn't I went from having to take this like half an hour plus break where I couldn't do anything else, and that had to be like time out of my work day that then I had to make up some other time, to being able to like be on the phone or on a Zoom or using my computer. And that was like a real game changer for me, was the hands-free pump. I had heard that they weren't great for supply. I don't know if it's just because I got it like later in when my milk was like really established, or if it was because they're better now. But I didn't have that experience. So I had avoided them for a long time because I was worried about it impacting my supply, but it was fine.
That's awesome. That's yeah, a lot of moms that I work with, they too find good luck with the hands-free pumps, but also they usually don't use that till they're coming back. Like they don't start out with the hands-free, but it is what a great option to have. Um, because it's a lot to juggle. It is a lot to juggle, and
Literally.
we literally the word juggling, yes, because if you've ever tried
Yes.
to hold pump parts and then your baby and all the things and not spill the milk, because that's a
Yeah.
whole
Oh, yeah.
devastational moment in itself. Um, yeah, it's this is so encouraging to other moms, and you're right. You kind of just have to take it one day at a time. And I know that I've had to counsel, like I said, my coworkers come and sometimes like if they run out of milk and they're like, oh my gosh, my we had to give her formula, and I'm like, girl, it's one bottle, it's one night. This is not going to stay this way. Like, hopefully it's easy to have that encouragement, but it's also easy. I guess the message I want to kind of jump on your coattails is that you're right. There is no one right way to do it. The right way is what works for you and your family. So
100%.
whatever that looks like. I mean, there's moms out there, working moms that just can't. Like, I come from a big prison town, and there's a lot of women that are prison guards, and there's just not even a conversation. We've tried, and they can't pump at work. They just cannot. So they breastfeed, and in the morning when they're home, and it works out enough. And that's success.
Yeah.
So often I think we equate breastfeeding not going according to quote plan as failure.
Mhm.
And that is completely untrue. If you breastfeed at all, that is a win. I mean, if you feed your baby, that's where we're going for fed babies. We really like that. So, just, I wish we could get rid of the words right and wrong
Yeah.
associated
Totally.
with breastfeed because
Uh, I
it,
bought a thing of formula really early on just to like have at the house as
yeah.
like a way to keep my anxiety at bay. Of like, okay, if this doesn't work out, I can feed the baby and that's fine. And I think we still have it somewhere still unopened somewhere in our
Yeah.
cabinets.
And
But
Yeah. I,
that's in mothering. That is in mothering. There's a couple things I keep around. I mean, I have a few things still in the house that I don't have a baby. I mean, I have grandkids now, but that just were like a security blanket. Um, even if it's like wipes and diaper cream, that sounds really crazy to have. But hey, if somebody shows up and they don't have a diaper, yay, you save the day. But just yeah, there is a lot of peace of mind, I think,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, sometimes there's lactation consultants that give the bad advice of like, they give the advice of like, don't have formula at home. And if that's what's going to help you feel confident, like, hey, I've got this backup, we don't have to run out at 2 a.m. to go find some, then that can make it much easier. You're right. I mean, it also depends on the person.
Yeah, I want to jump in here because one of the things I've just been observing you for the past year is just your incredible, and I know you, well, I'm going to say my perspective has been you have handled and juggled your professional world and your motherhood, and you've grown. But I know, like we've talked about, there are many women who don't have the opportunity, like working from home, having time to pump. What would you recommend? Like, let's try to change the culture. How could someone maybe go to their HR, explain? Because I remember, and you and I've talked about this before, Vicky, of like if I was the first officer in the unit that was pregnant because I was in an aviation unit. And that was just such a weird, and my boss would perpetually have a 5 o'clock meeting and I would need to go nurse and I would just like have this awful letdown in front of all these men. But I really want to have a conversation about, you know, how can we have those conversations with HR even before we're breastfeeding, even before we're pregnant, so that we can start shifting and like, well, could we do this? Because, like you said, Trisha, there's your daycare provider like had a glitch, and your company was so adaptable. They trusted you as an employee, they valued your work, and they were willing to work with you. But not every company is like that. But how do we take it to the bosses? How do we take it to the management and the HR to remind them that these women are doing double duty?
that's a tough question. I mean, so much of that is baked into like something so much broader than even the workplace, and we should have healthcare for everybody. Everybody
Yeah.
should be able to have, be able to take time off. That shouldn't be tied to your job because then it gets really complicated and difficult when you are a working mom. I have been really honest that if I had the ability to press pause on my career and take time off and be home with my baby, I would have done that.
Mhm.
But that's not the way it works. Even if we were in a financial position to do that, which we're not, um, you don't take time off and it's not a pause. You backtrack. And I couldn't do that. I'm at a point in my career where I can't do that work again. I can't do that hustle again. Uh, in terms of like working with HR, working with your boss, I think it's important for folks to know that we do have a federal law that protects your right to pump at work. It's called the Pump Act. And your employer, I think there's some nuances about like the size of your employer. There's some like exemptions, just like Family Medical Leave Act, which makes folks who work for really small companies difficult. Um, my organization is actually small enough that fits into that exemptions, but the state that I live in also has some additional safety nets. But the Pump Act does protect, it requires your employer to provide a space for you that is not a bathroom to pump. And so I think it's a fine line of wanting to work with your employer, make sure that they understand like this is, something that's important for your family, and also being willing to hold that line of like, you're also required to do this. I mean, I'm not asking, I'm telling you that you need to provide this to me. Um, and yeah, all of that being said, I again recognize like I'm in a much more privileged position than a lot of folks are. My workplace is great. I have a supervisor who is incredibly supportive of me and, has told me verbatim that they really want this to be a place that is supportive of families. And that's not everywhere, unfortunately. So I think it's a combination of knowing what your rights are and being willing to like stand up for that, and then also being willing to be flexible wherever you can and make sure your employer knows that like, I still want to do the work. Like I love my job, it's not that I'm trying to get time, extra time off. I need this time to be able to do this thing for my family too, which is also important.
That's awesome. I do know. So the United States has a breastfeeding coalition, and every state has a breastfeeding coalition, and it trickles down, I mean, to the towns. They're around. Um, And one of their programs is to visit places of employment, and they get like a little decal. I mean, I know it's really exciting, but they get a decal to put in their window that they support breastfeeding. And how do they get this decal? They have to have a place for their employees to, which yes, is also federally mandated. So it's kind of funny, but a lot of them are smaller companies. Like I live in a littler town, so, but they were pretty receptive. And and I think as far as, there are hospitals I have worked for that did not have a lactation policy for employees in place. I mean, so that's kind of wild, and how do you work on it? I mean, you have to, unfortunately, it's a slow change. It's a slow change, but doing, your employer setting an example and encouraging other mothers to do it. And also before it's kind of the time to start the fight is not when you show up on day one of work from having your baby and you need a place to pump. Like that's not, you don't have the wherewithal. So if you're thinking about having a baby or you're pregnant now and you're thinking about breastfeeding, now is a great time to address that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. When I first started at my organization, we're small enough that we didn't have to abide by the Family Medical Leave Act, and that was the only, but they voluntarily did that. So unpaid leave was the only
Yeah, sure.
piece that we had, and that was a discussion that I had with our senior leadership was like, this is something that I want is paid leave of some kind, and so now we have that policy in place, and that was well before we I was pregnant. And so I think it is thinking about these things early, and you know just approaching the conversation in a, don't start off the bat of these are my rights and I will have
Yes,
them.
exactly. Exactly. And I think this is
But
why
maybe being willing to go there if you have to.
yeah, right. Save that for like the last resort.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why I like the employers, this program, is that
Coalition.
it does approach it kindly. It's like, hey, we want to give you these things and we want to help. I mean, bigger coalitions can literally supply like a rocking chair or, they just kind of how big your coalition is. But anyway, that's if you're out there listening and you want something to do,
Yeah,
see if you have a breastfeeding coalition.
but I mean, it is important again because, the fact of the matter is that women are in the workforce, and the fact of the matter is the women have the babies, and there is that kind of juggle of like we have to consider the ramifications of how do we especially when we have a great employee that we value, right? And like you said, Trisha, like you're not just like, hey, I just want to take some time off or every half hour, a half an hour every 44 hours or whatever. It's like, no, no, I want to do the work and I also want to be, it's an and both. And that's where, and it's just amazing to me, 40 years, we're still having these types of conversations, but we're still encouraging improvement. There has been a lot of improvement,
Hmm.
but there's still, we still need to
Room to
move the
grow.
needle. Yeah,
How do they
room to
say
go.
it in the workforce? Opportunities for improvement.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So I would love to hear that. You know, was there any other tension that you had that had to work through as being an employee, being a mom? Um, I mean, it sounds like your environment support gave you a lot of support, but I'm sure there was still some tension on deciding different things. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think being a working mom is nothing but tension, and it mostly feels like you're not doing one or the other well, most of the time. And it's difficult to navigate that, even if you do have a workplace that's supportive. Pumping is a great example. Like, it can be still lonely and a little isolating where like I have to go, sorry everybody, like cool that everybody else gets to go have lunch or, is having a conversation after the meeting. I have to jet out of here so that I can go pump. And there's still plenty of instances where, you're in a different environment and you gotta like I've had to pump in the back of my car more times than I can
Yeah.
say. Um, and that just sucks, and it also it's hard to be away from your kid. And it's hard to, especially when daycare first starts, most kids have a hard time with that. My 1 year old finally has gotten, just like this past week, has gotten kind of into school and is like adjusting to the 1 year old room. She had a really hard transition. So it was like for the past like 6 weeks, every morning was tears. And you're like, cool, I guess I'll go get on a Zoom call now. Like,
Hmm.
it makes you like regret, and analyze all of your life's choices that brought you here. Um, but, it is about, I think, just pushing through again. And I value my career. I don't want to not work. I would love to be able to take some time if that was a possibility, but I accept that it's not. We just don't value families and childcare in that way in this country. And so, at least not at this point. Um, and so it is what it is, but I've worked hard to get where I'm at, and I love my job. And so it's a constant struggle of having to balance those two things. I will also say though that there is some pros. Like there's also like it's nice to go. Some days can feel nice. Of like it can be nice to go to work and remember that I have this whole other. I'm this person outside of being a mother, a full, person, and there's other things that I'm good at and people who rely on me and that can be, I think, a good reminder when things, especially in those first 4 or 5 months, 6 months, when things are like really hairy with the baby, it can be good to remind yourself that motherhood is an important component of who I am, but it's not all of who I am.
that's
100%.
That's so beautiful. That's really beautiful. I mean, again, I just want to commend you just watching you. You've just been a blossomed flower. Just been so wonderful to watch. the way you've, handled things, the way you've managed things, the way you've, thought outside the box, you've figured it out. And yeah, little one is just thriving, and it's just a delight to see. I think for me as the grandma, to wonderful to watch the relationship that you two still, that you have as bond, that you can tell that it's I mean, is it through breastfeeding? There's a connection. There's a connection. And you're still her safety net, and she knows that, which is so beautiful. Because that's, you study early child development. That's what they say. The two things that really help a person be grounded is to know that they're loved, and they're worth, like, they have people. That's where our disorder is, like, where's my people? Where did I receive that attention, that love, that value? Like, yes, I'm here. And she's just, she's just thriving, and adjusting, and she's adjusted these 6 weeks. She's grown, and now she's going into that 1 year room. So that's really beautiful. Just real quickly, just to kind of close, because I know you have to go back to work, and we thank you so much for allowing us this time. What would you say, give some insight to that you've gained for a woman that wants to breastfeed, that's a working mom, a working woman that maybe is pregnant, thinking about breastfeeding? How am I going to juggle this? All of this anxiety and worrying at night, like, well, how's it going to happen? What's going to happen? What would you give her to lower that anxiety and stress, to, like, here, this is something I want to give to you so that you could sleep at night and just breathe?
Yeah, I would say, first off, it's possible is the big thing that I would impart is, that was definitely, I didn't really have those models. So, I just didn't really know anybody who had breastfed and worked full time. It's like I constantly feel like I'm in this beyond breastfeeding, but this weird space where the people who parent the way that I want to parent are often stay-at-home moms.
Mhm.
And that's not no judgment or not a knock on any of the working moms I know, who I know some really incredible moms, but they often make different choices than I'm interested in making. And breastfeeding is one of those, really wanting that longevity. And that is, I just didn't know even if it was real, if it was possible. So few moms that I knew worked full time and breastfed for longer than a few months. And so that would be number one. And I think number two, I would say, again, just kind of tying it back to the beginning of the conversation, like, be easy on yourself. And any, it's great to have a goal. It's also, Vicky said this, like, the important thing is that your baby is fed, and nothing else really matters. You will find other ways to bond with your baby if breastfeeding doesn't work for you. And, there's a lot of tools that you can lean into if that's something that you really want to try to do. Know that it might take some work, and that's okay too. We can do hard things, but use everything that's at your disposal. And I think the last thing I would say is, for me personally, if you have the opportunity, therapy is huge. I have been in therapy since, again, we had a traumatic birth. And so that was something I recognized really early, that I needed to some extra support. And I was very lucky to find a therapist who started her career as an RN and a lactation consultant. And she has all of that sort of background, and then also has the, like, mental health and that kind of expertise. And that's sort of a diamond in the, I can't think of the right
Right, like a
phrase,
needle in a
but, like,
haystack.
that's rare. That's
Mhm.
rare. Yeah.
That's
But
amazing.
Yeah,
but
we
I
need to
do
get
think,
her
like,
on the podcast.
therapy, therapy just has been huge for me personally.
Yeah.
Trisha, I really appreciate all that you said. You've been very, very like open and vulnerable and honest. And I know this is going to touch many mothers' hearts because this is a hard topic and and moms think they always have to put their best face forward, and you are putting your best face forward, but also I love that you say, therapy is support. We all need support in this life. We're not meant to get through it all by ourselves. So, and I do know a lot of moms struggle with admitting, hey, I need some help, like whatever that looks like. And it is 100% okay to get help. Or I like that you word it, to get support, because that's really what it is. It's not quote help. You can get through the day, but to do it well and to, keep your self-esteem and your family self-esteem, in an okay place. I love that. Yes, support mamas, get it where you can.
Yes.
Totally. I mean, you would not, I think very few people in this world would think that they can go through their entire life without ever going to a doctor. Like, why would you think that your brain, the most important part of your body, can survive this life without some additional support? I mean, we have to
Yeah,
go to the dentist, we have to go to the doctor. Like, it's this, I see it as the same thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And
We're gonna have
hopefully,
to run with that. We're gonna have to put that in the show notes. That's fantastic.
yeah. Well, and this is one of the reasons why we do this podcast is that we want to be this part of this one piece of the support for you, however that looks like. So thank you so much. Real quickly, we're going to close with we just have a little blessing that we have. So, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, may the God of peace himself make you perfectly holy, and may you entirely, spirit, soul, and body, be preserved blameless for the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. The one who calls you is faithful, and he will accomplish it. Amen. Father,
Amen.
Son. Again, thank you so much, Trisha. We really
Yes, thank
appreciate
you.
it. And till next time, Divas, drop us a line. We'd love to hear a review of what you thought about this interview and anything else that you would like to hear on how we can support you on different topics. So, Mama Vicky, it's good to see you.
Yes, good to see you guys. Have a great day.